I stood motionless, my boots sinking into the mud as I stared at the towering mansions being built atop the land my grandfather had cherished his entire life. 110 luxury homes rising like vultures over the grave of everything he worked for. I felt the rage crawl up my spine. They told me I had no legal claim, that the land had been purchased fair and square by some upscale HOA development. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just some grieving heir. I was a hydraulic engineer, and I knew exactly how to turn nature into the perfect revenge weapon. It all started 6 months ago, when I got the call that my grandfather, Walter Hayes, had passed. He left me 80 acres of farmland, complete with a modest house, lush meadows, and a delicate wetland system he'd nurtured for decades. We hadn't spoken much since I walked away from my city engineering job, disgusted by the corruption that killed my wetland restoration project. He said I gave up. I said I refused to play along. We never really resolved that fight. I returned to the property expecting to grieve, to reconnect with the land. But what I found instead was an invasion. Bulldozers, cranes, cement mixers all carving up the eastern stretch of the land I inherited. $1-million homes already in framing. My land, my inheritance, gone. When I confronted the site manager, he told me to take it up with the Clearwater Bluffs HOA. That's where I met Miranda Bell, the blonde PR-polished president of the HOA who handed me a folder full of forged documents and a smug smile. According to her, the land was classified as abandoned, with unpaid taxes, a transfer signed with my name except it wasn't my signature. I tried reasoning with her, asking how they could proceed when ownership was in dispute. Her response? This city's growing. Mr. Hayes, what were you going to do with the land anyway? Raise chickens? That's when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft backed by a web of dirty officials. I called my old college friend, Alex Monroe, now a defense attorney, and together we dug through records. The corruption was staggering. Tax documents were falsified. Zoning laws quietly amended by city council members who had personal ties to the development. My grandfather's taxes were paid in full. Someone had altered the city's database. Councilman Blake Stanton signed off on the zoning change just days after my grandfather was hospitalized. This wasn't incompetence. It was a coordinated land grab. When we filed a legal challenge, Miranda responded by escalating the construction. Crews worked day and night. They blocked my driveway, dumped concrete near my wetlands. I reported the harassment to the local sheriff who happened to be Stanton's brother-in-law. Nothing happened. They tried to exhaust me. Sleep deprivation, isolation, even smear campaigns. They told local businesses I was unstable. I couldn't buy nails from the hardware store or get a seat at the diner I'd been going to since I was a kid. But they underestimated how well I knew that land, how well I understood water. I began walking the old flood channels at night, flashlight in hand. My grandfather had built a sophisticated water control system, sluice gates, retention ponds, natural spillways, all designed to redirect seasonal floods away from the valley. And I realized something chilling. The HOA had built on the original floodplain, protected only by systems they didn't understand. Rachel Sims, a former investigative reporter turned local activist, joined our fight. She'd been tracking Miranda and Councilman Stanton for months. She exposed that they owned shell companies used to buy up cheap land and resell it at inflated prices through the HOA. Some homes were being pre-sold at triple their value to overseas buyers who didn't know the flood risks. We reached out to other locals who had been pressured off their land. Most were scared. A few came forward. Margaret Dorsey, 77 years old, showed me photographs from 1986 when the entire valley was underwater. My grandfather's system changed everything. Without it, the new construction was sitting on a time bomb. So I did what I knew how to do best. I made the land speak. I legally restored the drainage system, cleared debris, reinforced berms, adjusted the water flow using the exact permits they never thought to cancel. And when a massive storm system rolled in, I simply didn't intervene. Rain fell for 2 days straight. On the morning of the grand opening of Clearwater Bluffs, I watched from my porch as water reclaimed the land. The model home flooded. Luxury driveways underwater. Foundations cracked. And Miranda? drenched and screaming into a phone. Designer heels sunk in mud. Local news helicopters circled the scene. Environmental groups descended with petitions and lawsuits. Rachel's exposé went viral, featuring satellite imagery showing how the HOA had disrupted the wetlands and diverted natural runoff. Public opinion turned fast. The same couple who mocked me weeks ago showed up on TV, crying about losing their retirement investment. At the emergency city council hearing, we presented everything: forged signatures, doctored tax rolls, secret bank transfers. Rachel played a recording of Miranda confessing she knew about the flood risk. It wasn't even close. The city revoked the permits. Stanton resigned. The HOA collapsed. Criminal charges followed. I didn't dance on their graves. I just stood on my porch, looking out at the abandoned construction site, now turned swamp again, and whispered, "This is how the land wants to be." We turned the farm into a conservation area. Rachel now leads educational tours. And me? I sleep better knowing water, like truth, always finds a way. So, what would you do if someone tried to steal your legacy? Would you drown in their leisure or make sure they did?